Scourge Between Stars is a 2023 science fiction horror novella by Ness Brown. I think I recall seeing this one when it first came out. I picked it up because it looked like it had some alien vibes in it, and because it was only 165 pages long. It then proceeded to sit on my to-read pile for 2 years until I dug it out and picked it up. And hey, what do you know? Not bad. It wasn't my favorite novella of all time, but still a decent read, so I figured I'd throw a recommendation / light critique your way. So, basic premise of the book is actually kind of familiar to me. Humanity went and abandoned Earth to colonize another planet. Ultimately, it failed, so now they're trying to return to Earth. It's been a long time since I've watched Battlestar Galactica, but I recognize the setup. The problem is that the fleet returning to Earth has gotten real rusted and busted with time, in part because of the engagements that keep hitting them. Without spoiling, this is sort of explained towards the end of the book, but basically the ships are getting randomly attacked. Provisions are tight. It's looking more and more like the colonists are not going to get back to Earth in time. Jacqueline Albright is the daughter of the captain, who is currently holed up in his bunk and refusing to come out, leaving Jacqueline as the low-key de facto captain of the Calypso. Jacqueline's mother died after losing the plot after becoming convinced that there were aliens in the ship, which, for context, they left the colony planet, I think they said, 100 years ago. It was long enough ago that there's a reasonable expectation that any aliens on the ships would have been noticed by now. Jacqueline's older sister, Kimberly, also died at some point, and I will be damned if I remember how. So Jacqueline's not having the greatest time of her life, but then things really hit the fan when the ship's grain silos are found to be majorly depleted. And also, there's some really weird banging in the walls that doesn't sound like the normal parts of a ship. Oh, and also a guy turns up dead, disemboweled, and hidden in a compartment. That's about as much as the plot as I'll give away here. I think it gives you the gist as to what you're getting into. Space horror in the form of a limping fleet suddenly being plagued with violent murders. So there were several things that I liked about the book. First, Jacqueline is a solid protagonist. Found her interesting, relatable, and good as far as her role and responsibility as a captain. Occasionally you'll see in stories a person who is in a position of authority and you think, who the hell gave that person responsibility for anything more complicated than a pet rock? But Jacqueline was a solid leader. She fit the role well. Additionally, even though I definitely guessed what direction the book was heading in because there were, dare I say, some hints on the cover, there's a decent mystery in here initially as to what exactly was happening and why it was happening. There was also a significant threat to the people on board the ship. It's already in bad shape. They're nowhere near Earth or even the planet that they colonized. They're already having to cut rations, and now people are getting murdered and their food stores are getting dangerously low. Big stakes, creates a nice sense of tension, and it doesn't take long for the action to kick off. The horror was good. As before, the tension is high, the threat is real, and the problem that Jacqueline and her crew have to confront is a very challenging one. There are some excellent scenes in the dark where the author nicely captured Jacqueline's horror as she watches her other crew members being killed. That being said, there are a few flaws that undercut some of the things that I liked. First, this book suffers from a bit of a common problem that I see in a lot of novellas, and that's a lack of depth. It's not impossible to create a well-fleshed-out novella. I would argue that Stephen King's novella, The Body, does it very well. But Scourge Between Stars does what I've seen some other novellas do, and that's sacrificing background development for the sake of brevity. Jacqueline's family situation and history is immediately relevant to the plot. Her dad, the captain, isolating himself is relevant. Her mom thinking the fleet is full of aliens is relevant, and her sister being dead is somewhat relevant because a major character, an android named Watson, has been modeled after her, which is obviously very distressing for Jacqueline and impacts how she works with it. But we get very, very little insight into Jacqueline's life with her family or how her mother and sister died. I said before that, I don't remember how her sister Kimberly died, and now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know that it was ever necessarily clarified how she died. The mother basically started a cult around her belief that there were aliens on the fleet, and that is almost not gone into at all. The very, very little detail we get on that. And that's a very interesting piece of development that is, again, relevant to how things unfold in this story. But Kimberly's death, I don't really recall it being discussed in detail. Jacqueline is mourning her. She's very sad about her loss. She's irritated that Watson's been modeled after her. But we don't actually get that much in terms of her memories of her sister or how she passed. We also get very little insight in general on what it was like to grow up on a ship. Jacqueline was not born on the colony planet, and if I recall correctly, the Calypso isn't due to make landfall on Earth for a very, very, very long time. That means that even before everything goes to hell, Jacqueline can almost guarantee that she's going to live and die aboard the Calypso. I kind of wish the author got a little deeper into her mind, because that means that everything Jacqueline is doing right now is with the understanding that she will not immediately benefit from it. She will be doing it for the generations that come after her, which I think plays into her character very nicely, but it's just not explored very much. One other issue I have with the book was the ending. I won't get into it too deeply since I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but it felt a little too neat and clean, tied up with a nice little bow. I would almost argue that it's contrived, but the author did do some good work to lay kind of the groundwork to indicate that we were heading in that direction throughout the book. It wasn't entirely unexpected, but it did just come across as maybe a teensy bit too convenient to me. The happy ending came across as just a teensy bit too forced. But otherwise, yeah, I would say that The Scourge Between Stars is a decent sci-fi horror novella. Not the deepest thing you'll ever read. Might skimp a little on character development and setting the scene. But it had some good sci-fi and horror elements in it that I really enjoyed. I recommend.